Thank you, Joni, for that introduction, and thank you to Covia for helping to host this, along with a number of other key business organizations. Let's give them a big hand. And of course, to Dean Olian, and to the faculty and students, to all of those who added their voices to this morning's conversation, of course, to my friend Chancellor Abrams, who's here with us today as well. Thank you all. Let's give them all a big hand. Whenever I come to the Anderson School and hear the forecast, I always leave feeling as if my vision has been corrected, and believe me, it's not always a painless procedure. Who was it that first called economics the dismal science? That description certainly doesn't apply to anyone in this room. On the contrary, in my experience, economists know how to have a good time. This morning, you've talked about solutions for some of the most difficult, some say the most intractable problems facing our city and our region. But I want to open today by saying how fortunate I feel, and how fortunate we should all feel to live in a place like Los Angeles. There's no question that we face a monumental challenge as a city, but we should never lose sight of how blessed we truly are. If we spend more than our fair share of time stuck in traffic, it's because so many people dream of living here in Los Angeles. It's because so many people find opportunities in Los Angeles that would be inconceivable anyplace else. A city like no other in the world. We're rich in world-class institutions of higher learning, and we're actually here, hosted by one, my alma mater, UCLA. We're very fortunate to have an abundance of world-class talent that's produced here at this university and at that university across the city. Another great institution, USC, and of course, Caltech, the CSUs. This is, without question, a city of great talent. We're also the undisputed creative capital, not just of the United States, but the world. The logistical nexus and the economic heart of the Pacific Rim. And we claim home to a truly global city, a thriving community encompassing a dazzling and infinite diversity of human experience and perspective. As Angelenos, we come from 140 different countries. We speak 224 different languages. We boast the largest concentration of Mexicans living outside of Mexico City, more Nicaraguans living outside of Nicaragua than any other place, more Guatemalans, more Salvadorans. How many other cities can boast of having a little Ethiopia, a little Persia, a little Armenia, and a little Tokyo? We also have a Chinatown, a Koreatown, a Thai town, and an historic Filipino town. And of course, let's not forget that this is Tinseltown as well. Our market is surging with over $420 billion in commerce, the 17th largest economy in the world, larger than the national economies of Taiwan, Belgium, Saudi Arabia, Norway, and Turkey. Our writers and producers are telling the stories and making the music that are defining the culture not just of Los Angeles and the United States, but world culture as well. Our ports are moving the goods that are moving the national economy. We were just, and I know that I can't see with the lights, all of you are here today, but I know there are members of the Chamber of Commerce of Los Angeles, and we were just in Washington, D.C., where we shared a seminal report on our port, and what we said was, as goes Los Angeles, so goes the nation. In every single congressional district, there are jobs and dollars produced as a result of the goods that we move. We move 43% of all the goods, seaborne goods that enter the United States of America. In the next 20 years, we expect to move 70% of all the seaborne goods. So Los Angeles, in many ways, is an improbable success story. 44 settlers on the remote periphery of the Spanish Empire, scratching a pueblo out of the dust, constrained by natural resources, unblessed by geography, limited to what humans could imagine and build. But that's always been the story of our city. Whenever I think about what it means to be from Los Angeles, what it is to be an Angelino, I think of my mother, a single mom who raised 4 kids. She worked 2 jobs. She rode the bus nearly every day of her life, and she did it with confidence. She looked forward to the future, secure in the knowledge that with hard work, her dreams for her children would come true in this incredible city of dreams, where so many people have been able to reach success on a scale and scope second to no place, not just in the United States of America, but any place in the world. And here we are today. We've touched on many issues this morning. I wasn't here for the presentations, but I did get a briefing, and of course I got an opportunity to read the forecast and report. I must say, very fortunate when I say that we have talent. Make no mistake, there's great talent in this city. And we all recognize that these issues are interrelated, that the economy is not static, it is not isolated, that we're all connected and all interrelated. And I would like to submit to you that the defining challenge that we face as Angelinos lies in sustaining and maintaining the single focus that my mother had, the confidence in the future that she had, the confidence in the future that the many immigrants who come to Los Angeles have when they come here, because make no mistake, this is the new Ellis Island of America, the city of America's hope and promise. There are so many statistics that define LA's problems. We have more gang members than any city in America. We have fewer police. We have more homeless than any city in America. We have the 3rd most expensive housing market. We have less of a penetration of the middle class in our schools than any big school district in the United States of America. More homeless kids in our schools, more foster kids, more kids on the school lunch program, and yet at the same time, this is also a city with as many billionaires, if not more, than any city in America. Some 267,000 millionaires live in the LA region. Our per capita, we have the nation's smallest middle class, but I think it's important to stress that Los Angeles is not alone in many respects in terms of the divergence between wealth and poverty. If anything, we're on the leading edge of national trends. In America today, we're seeing greater concentrations of wealth at the very top than at any time since the Gilded Age. More and more Americans find themselves working harder and earning less. Half of our people are teetering just months from bankruptcy. And this is a trend that no city, no state, no nation, no democratic nation can afford to ignore. I call it the law of physics. Things implode when you lose the middle. The economic ladder ceases to be a ladder at all when there are no rungs connecting the top to the bottom. And so I believe that our central challenge as a city lies in imagining and building a future where more middle-class families can flourish and grow, and where more of our people reach the middle class. First, that means broadening the opportunity base. It means insisting on great public schools. Now, for some of you, you've heard me say almost ad nauseum about why we need to focus on these schools. Take a good look at me. I don't live in East LA, by the way, any longer. I live at Getty House. And before that, I didn't live in East LA either. But you look at me and the success that I've been able to enjoy. My sister's a Superior Court judge. My brother's a commodities broker. My other sister runs the largest community health clinic in Los Angeles. We've been able to achieve the success that we achieve because we can read and write. because my mother made education her #1 priority. We, every one of us, the single moms, the single dads, the business leaders, the educational leaders of this city, the political leadership of this city, have got to come together because we're in it together. We've got to say that my son, thankfully, and feel very blessed, just got accepted to Princeton. And I say to people, I almost feel bad because I know that there are kids in our schools today that won't make it to college, that won't make it to a better life, and they're every bit as smart as my son, every bit as capable, but we're not going to succeed as a city. We're not going to build the middle class if we're not focused on changing the paradigm of failure in our schools. And so if it's ad nauseum for some of you, so be it. I recognize, and I don't need a crystal ball to understand that. I look at my own life experience. I can't see everybody, but I know there are many stories of success in this room today. Without a public school system, which has always been the bedrock of our democracy and the vehicle for opportunity in America, LA will never achieve its greatness as a global city. We will never move people to the middle class. You talk about a redistribution of wealth. The only way that happens is when you can read and write and you can engage in a global economy that's predicated on information and on intellectual capital. And so, as many of you may have noticed, we come to elections in May. And whatever the outcome, I want to be absolutely clear. I intend to work hand in hand with this with a new school board and with the superintendent to lead the fundamental changes that we need in our schools. I don't care what data you accept. Together we can't accept a status quo where between 1/3 and 1/2 of our children will never wear a cap and gown. Good schools are the ladder and lifeline of economic mobility. And we have to do more. We have to insist on state and federal policies to support cities. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I love being mayor of this city because I don't have to be either. I could be a nonpartisan leader. But let me tell you this. There's been a failure over the last decade, for sure, but even over the last 40 years to really invest in our cities. The bankers that are here can tell you that 88% of the wealth that's generated in America is generated in our cities. And the federal government has failed over the last 40 years, but especially over the last 7, to really invest in cities, invest in infrastructure, invest in highways, invest in schools, invest in public transportation in a way that we need to grow the economy, in the way that we need to attract good jobs, in the way that we need to have the people who have the wherewithal to do those jobs. And so we have to insist on a greater investment on the part of the federal government. Investment in universal pre-K, funding for the Leave No Child Behind Act, and not just platitudes. Investments in college savings and lifetime learning accounts. If we want to build the middle class, we have to understand it's about education, K through 12. It's about the community colleges. It's about investment in our institutions of higher learning. I went to UCLA at a time when the state was investing in the UCs at a level that we no longer even closely reach. The state, the federal government, all of us have to invest in America again. That starts with schools. That starts with community colleges, the CSUs, public institutions like the great one that gave me the opportunity to be here today. In addition, we've got to invest in housing. We look at the LA situation today, 3rd lowest home ownership rate in America. I've done 2 years running now, $100 million in the Housing Trust Fund. So that's $200 million. Of that, I also did $124 million for Section 8 vouchers to move homeless families out of housing. Of the $200 million, $100 million is going for housing for homeless with permanent services. And yet, it's a drop in the bucket. I said here last year that this city has to invest in affordable housing. And when I say affordable, I'm talking about housing not just for the very poor, but if you're a firefighter or a teacher, if you're a nurse, if you work for the city or the county, you can't afford to buy a home in Los Angeles, when the median price for a home is somewhere around $550,000. We're going to have to invest in housing. We need help from the federal government. We need assistance, and we passed the bond at the state level. But we're going to have to invest in this city and in the issue of affordable housing if we're going to address the need for working families, for the middle class to be able to have a piece of the rock. I don't mean to pick on the bankers, but I saw one of my friends here today who presented to you a few minutes ago. Look, what is the number one way? It's the way I've created and I don't have much wealth, but what's the number one way for most people to create wealth in America? They buy a house. I mean, most of us, excuse me to the CEOs here, but most of us, we buy a house. We buy a house, and that's our little piece of the rock, and then you buy a second one, and you get a little rental. That's where it starts. You can't create wealth without home ownership in America. And, if the middle class can't buy a home here, they won't live here. And that's why it's so important. So we've got to commit ourselves to investing in affordable housing, commit ourselves. I've said that I'm ready and willing to go back to the voters with a bond for affordable housing, a $1 billion bond. We got close last time around, but not close enough. We've got to continue to knock on that door, because without those kinds of investment, without the leveraging of capital that brings, because $1 billion for affordable housing brings almost $3 billion in the leveraging that you could bring for new housing. We've got to do it. It's the only way we're going to address homelessness in Los Angeles. It's the only way we're going to address the affordability crisis. And so make no mistake, we face a dim and divided future as a nation if we allow the defining dream of home ownership to become a privilege of just the affluent. And I know the people who live here and are working here, many of us couldn't afford to buy our own home today. Our kids couldn't live in the neighborhood we live in. They just can't. And in order for them to buy a home, we have to help them. And so in addition to our help, we need the help of others as well. And this bond could go a long way to helping us do that. But we also need to build smart, and I know that you've talked about that. In your report, we need to build in areas like our downtown core that have been traditionally overlooked. We need to strategically target resources in neglected neighborhoods. One of the things we're doing in the city, in addition to our $200 million that we put in the Housing Trust Fund, we're drawing down money from the state and saying to them they should create formulas that reward self-help cities and counties, so we leverage their money against ours. We're using our pension funds, no pun intended, we're using our pension funds to invest in affordable housing, bringing in the private sector, connecting it with our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and now trying to bring STRS and PERS with us. So we're starting to leverage investment. There are a lot of banks here today. Your participation in this effort begins to help us leverage affordable housing in a smart way. You've heard me talk about smart growth. Well, we need to reimagine what the city looks like. Build the 24-hour communities where people live, shop, and commute to their jobs without spending the equivalent of 2 entire work weeks a year stuck in traffic. Some people are critical of that. Not downtown. They get it there. That's the place where we're going to invest in what they called transit-oriented development, mixed use. We're going to go vertical there, just like you go vertical when you go to Paris and London and Shanghai, Gary, and all the other places that you've been when you travel around the world. Why is it good enough for the great cities of the world and not good enough for Los Angeles? I'll tell you why. Because here we too often respond to 10 people who are against something. Well, I learned something a long time ago, and once again I learned it from my mom when I was on a college campus. My mother said, you know, son, I see you in these protests. I know you're such a believer. You're for social justice. I have such a respect for you. But when you grow up, son, people want to know what you're for, not just what you're against. And I never forgot that. And we as a city have to be for building this middle class, for investing in this city, for smart growth, for strategically investing our assets in a way that grow the economy, that invest in people, and that rethink what the city looks like. So that means that in places like Century City, yes, those of you who live there, we are going to put housing next to shopping, next to jobs. That's what you do throughout the nation and the world, and that's what we're going to do here. But obviously, we've got to do it smart. We've got to do it where it makes the most sense. We've got to build the support, got to reimagine. And that's why it's so important to hear from people like all of you. We've got to reimagine what the downtown core could look like, what the transit corridors could look like, how we connect more people with jobs. The reason you hear me talk about public transportation all the time, again, ad nauseum, is because without it, we're never going to deal with traffic. And thank you for saying I put, stop construction during the rush hour. Yes, I did. I put 70 traffic officers at the worst intersections. Yes, I did. I did the Tiger teams on Wilshire Boulevard. 20% increase saving of commute time on Wilshire Boulevard during the traffic hour. And with all of that, you've barely noticed, and people are still complaining. Why? Let's be honest. Because almost every one of you, including me, got here by car today. Almost none of you got here on a bus, and we got a great public transportation system. We have the best bus system in the United States of America. These red buses that you see, the rapid buses, they're great. They can take you down Wilshire Boulevard in 50 minutes to UCLA. And your kids use them, though your professors and other workers probably need to use them a little more. So we've got to invest in public transportation. We also got money for the HOV lane on the 405. Why was that important? We got to encourage people to get out of their single passenger automobile. Two of us in a car once in a while. I mean, we're never going to deal with traffic without those kinds of investments. That's why you saw me passing out the flyers and schlepping from one place to another, because promises made is promises kept. When the governor and the state said, we want your support, and we voted for those bonds at greater numbers than anybody in the state. And then they give us 12% of the money that's supposed to go to congestion, and we were supposed to get 33. You're darn right you had one hot-blooded, mayor, pretty hot. And we ended up getting 29% of the money, not quite 33%, but it was a start. And so we've got to invest in HOVs. We've got to invest in making our freeways smarter and better. But we also got to invest in public transportation. We're building the exposition line from downtown to Santa Monica. Very important. It'll start from downtown to Culver City, the first phase. Be finished by 2010. The GOLD line to East LA. It'll be finished by 2010. We opened up the Orange line. We're looking at another north-south corridor for a busway. I've talked about, again ad nauseum, but we're going to do it. Make no mistake. You got to dream, folks. If you're not dreaming and then doing the wherewithal. My mother, keep on referring to my mother, she used to do something called self-actualization, not self-visualization. The difference between self-visualization and self-actualization, she used to always tell me, is you don't just dream. You have a vision of where you're going, and then you work hard every day to get there. You don't just dream. And so when you hear me dreaming, I'm not just a dreamer. I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm engaging the city. And I'm saying, yes, we're going to build a subway to the sea because we have to. There's just no other way around it. Now, we're not going to get there overnight. I've been mayor not 2 years yet. It's 21 months. And I would have liked to have done everything in the first 30 days. But that's not the way it works. You've got to engage people. You've got to build consensus. You've got to draw down dollars from the state, the feds. You've got to deal with the fact that in this city, when I became mayor, we had a budget deficit of $297 million. And the business leaders who are here know you can't operate when every day you're writing a check that's getting you farther and farther in the red. Now, I'm a Democrat and proud of it, a progressive, but I understand this as a dad. My son can't go to Princeton if mom and dad can't pay the bills. That means we can't loan ourselves use a credit card as we've been doing. So we're going to have to live within our means in this city, while at the same time growing efficiently and providing as much of the resources as we can. Speaking of resources, one of the things you've heard me talk about, and I noticed in this report today, look, the country, everybody gets it now. Democrat and Republican again. I mean, all those people that had their heads in the sand and said that global warming didn't exist. I mean, come on. You don't have a scientist here at UCLA, Caltech, SC, Stanford, or any college in California that is still maintaining that this climate isn't getting hotter and that climate change is having a tremendous impact, not just on the climate, but on the economy and on the quality of life of our people. Our investment strategically and smartly in the green economy, moving, here in California, the state went to 20% green power by the year 2017. Well, not to be outdone, and because LA has to be the greenest, cleanest big city in America, we're going to go to 20% renewables by 2010. We're already at 8% just in the last 18 months, and we're going to get to 20% by the year 2010. Why is that important? Well, first of all, we play our part in cleaning up the air. Second of all, we begin to invest in moving away from an over-reliance on fossil fuels at a national level, and it starts with city and states. But then, very importantly, for the business people here, where are the opportunities? If California is leading the way, if the nation, and not just the nation, Shanghai, Mexico City, every big city in the world is moving to clean up their carbon emissions and reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. So, what do we have? We have an opportunity to create a new economy here. A new economy exporting our intellectual capital to clean up the environment. LA should be the center of that. Why? We have the dirtiest air in America. We have a port that produces 26% of all the carcinogens in the region. So we've got to grow our port, and we will, but we also have to green our port and develop it with UCLA, SC, Caltech, the intellectual capital to do that. So we've got to see beyond just the few feet before us. We've got to invest in the city, recognize the key financial and logistical bridge linking Asia and Latin America. When you hear me talk about education, and every time I do a press conference, I do it in English and Spanish. And what I said to people when they first started complaining about this in 1998 when I became speaker, I said, look, if I could speak Mandarin, Korean, and Armenian, I'd be doing my press conferences in those languages as well. In every other country in the world, we get it. People being able to speak 2 and 3 languages is a good thing, not a bad thing. In a city with 36 different nationalities that have their largest population here outside of their country of origin, in a city with 50%, 48% foreign-born according to the census in 2000, in a city with a gateway to the east. Gary, when we went to China, everybody there, the leaders there, business and political, could speak English. When we go to Mexico in a month, all of their leaders can speak English. Our ability to speak Mandarin and Spanish and Korean and Armenian in the Venice of the 21st century, in the place that's moving the goods of the world, is critical to the future of this city. We need schools that can do that, and we need to understand that it's a key to our future. Supporting the new economy. I mean, look, you hear me talk about biotech. Why is biotech so important? Because we've got UCLA, SC, and Caltech, everybody. We've got the City of Hope. We've got, the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and all the great medical institutions that we have here. This is ground zero. we have to grow that economy. We have to invest in the intellectual capital here. I was at Cedars-Sinai to announce $75 million of an investment in biotech. Why? Because it's a job creator. And the important thing about biotech and biomed, you don't need a master's or a doctorate in biotech or in biology to be able to do that job. A lot of the people that do it have, 2 years in college. So these are great jobs for the new economy. We've got to focus on that. In a city that speaks Spanish the way we do, with 48% of the city who are Latino, this should be the capital of the Spanish language media and entertainment. It shouldn't be Miami. And you're going to see us competing. Now that Univision was purchased by a group of people who live in Los Angeles as well, we've got to rethink, where the Spanish language media should be centered. It should be centered here. This is the city where it should be. And we've got to focus our economy to bring them in. The entertainment capital. We just had a press conference, 2 weeks ago, where we talked about 455,000 jobs in the creative economy. Not just entertainment where, music and film, not just them, but fashion and the graphic arts and all of the related industries. This is the town where we should be growing the confluence of the creative economy. The town where we should be merging the digital economy with entertainment and moving smarter to a city that is focused on the jobs of the 21st century. So finally, let me just say the ports. When I mentioned that the ports are such a critical part of the future, we're moving 43% of the goods into the United States through our ports. We're scheduled to move 70% of the goods in the next 20 years. There's an industry called logistics, which is the industry, the business leaders understand, is the industry of the movement of goods. Again, these aren't jobs that require, a master's. They're not they're jobs that require high school education, maybe a year or two of college, some of them. Jobs that are growing in the pay at manufacturing level rates, not $9 an hour, but $15 and $20 an hour and more. And so investing in logistics, investing in commerce and moving those goods is a key to the future of this city. So I want to acknowledge all of you here and the UCLA forecast for the work that they did. So much of what you talked about in this report are things that we're focused on, things that we need to do better, things that we need to build public-private partnerships about. We need to be the city that's not just the manufacturer of ideas and culture, but a city focused on recognizing that the diversity of this city is our competitive advantage, that the great institutions of higher learning like UCLA are an asset and a foundation for the creation of wealth in an economy that's so focused on intellectual capital and on the understanding that only together, when we understand that we're interrelated and working together, focused on the future, imagining what that future could look like, building on our assets, can we truly be a place where we're moving the middle class to its rightful place as the foundation of our city. Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you. And again, I want to thank all of the folks from the UCLA forecast. Thank you.
Mayor, that was truly an inspired and inspirational speech. If I could think of a summary of today in a single word, the word would be community. And that's a reference to the fact that our solutions will come first and foremost from the recognition that we're all part of the same diverse family. And there's no individual in Los Angeles who better represents the community spirit and community action than our Mayor, Antonio Villaraigosa. So we are honored by your presence and we are blessed by your leadership. Thank you very much.